Hi, everyone. Doug Laney here. As co-chair of the 16th Annual MIT Chief Data Officer Symposium and Innovation Fellow with West Monroe, a premier sponsor of the event, I'd like to invite you to connect with my colleagues and me there. This year's hybrid event offers sessions for everyone from technical concepts like blockchain, data science, and data ops to more strategic topics like alternative data, data monetization, the emerging role of the Chief Data Officer, and even the data implications of ESG. I hope to see you in Cambridge this July.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome. I have the unique pleasure, actually, of introducing an industry thought leader. Been in the industry over 35 years. He is a fellow or a partner at West Monroe. I'm going to promote you. In fact, I'll make you a senior partner because Nicholas is amazing. He's been a board-level strategist. He's an expert, and he's here to talk to us about data's critical role in becoming a digital business. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over. It's all you.
Great, Robert. Thank you. Everybody hear me okay? Great. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. Let me tell you who I am for a second. So Nick Hahn, partner with West Monroe out of our New York office. West Monroe is a digital business strategy and technology consulting firm. I'll talk more about that in just a moment. My area of focus is with a division we call Pixel, so Product Experience and Engineering Lab. So we are very focused on helping clients to build out digital products and experiences and the various components that come around that. We all within West Monroe sort of focus in certain industries. My focus is predominantly with banks, financial services. I also do a lot of work in retail and consumer goods. And have been doing this about 4 years. Prior to this, worked at another consulting firm named Sapient, which some of you may have run across. And prior to that was for a long time in industry at Johnson & Johnson and the Coca-Cola Company. So a little bit on both sides of the equation. To give you a quick snapshot of West Monroe, we are now about 2,200 people. We keep growing, so we have to keep updating our slide. We just had our 20th year anniversary. Headquartered in Chicago, but we have a number of offices around the country, including New York. We also just opened an office in London, which is very exciting for us. And if you look kind of on the upper right, you'll see that there are a select number of industries that we focus on. And sort of a big part of our value proposition is having folks who can go very deep in understanding a given industry and their issues and how those businesses run and make money. We also do quite a bit of work in the M&A space with private equity firms, both due diligence and working on portfolio companies. And on the right-hand side, these are sort of the capabilities that we bring. It really runs from kind of strategy on the front end all the way to organizational design on the back end. So pretty good end-to-end capability. What I want to talk to you about today is how to move from doing digital projects to truly becoming a digital business. So this conference is very much about data. Doug and I work together quite frequently. We have Penny Wan from our data and analytics team here as well. What I want to do is maybe pull this back a little bit and talk about sort of the role that data plays in the broader context of the business and what we've seen helping to drive success with our clients and hopefully of some benefit to you as well. Digital is really coming like a freight train, and it doesn't show any signs of slowing down. If you look at the Fortune 100 and take the top 30 companies, 23 of those 30 would be considered digital. Some of those, as you will see in white, are digitally native. Others, though, are legacy businesses who've made significant changes to go and make that happen. So it is really becoming more of a necessity than something that's optional. If you look at what people care about, so three of the top things are their money, their work, and their health. Digital is also infiltrated into that in a very substantial way. So in banks, about 7 out of 10 consumers really would prefer never to have to go back to a branch. And what we're finding is where you put digital programs in place that are effective, you see revenue for those customers that are nearly double the growth rate of what you see for customers who are using only analog methods. You're also seeing higher retention and lots of other positive things. When you look in the work environment, All of us, about 50% of the workforce is working from home. Most of us prefer some kind of a hybrid thing going forward. With one of our utility clients, they were able to realize a 20% improvement in cost with some of the self-serve capabilities they put in place. And we do a lot of work in healthcare. Last year, there were over 1 billion telemedicine visits, which is kind of an incredible number. So not only do people like that better, but it drove significant cost savings for healthcare providers. So lots and lots of benefits can accrue here. The problem is that this is not easy to do. So this slide is a list of a number of things that our clients tend to struggle with. And I would imagine as you think about either your business or clients that you serve, you may hear some of these same things. So one of them is around sort of the case for action. Why do I need to do this? How do I sort of prove the case for that? How do I drive alignment of that strategy and vision into the organization? Most of our clients don't have a clear vision, nor is it as well aligned as it ought to be. Legacy technology, slowing down the ability to move quickly and innovate. A lot of clients have a lot of data. They're not terribly good, at the moment anyway, of turning that data into insights, either to help inform things on the front end or help personalize kind of in the customer experience. They don't have the right talent, and that talent isn't using the right approaches and processes. The funding and incentives are misaligned, and maybe most importantly is they're not really aligned to the customer. So the notion of customer centricity or being customer obsessed, it's talked about a lot. If you look at the companies that truly live that way, we think it's very few. And so the net result of all this is that companies are not able to move as quickly as their customer expectations are moving. So meeting them, much less exceeding them, is very difficult. And about 70% of digital projects still today are failing to meet their sort of ingoing business objectives. So there are a lot of things that still need to be fixed. So what we want to talk a bit about is how to address some of those shortcomings and what we've seen be successful for businesses. The concept generally is that digital, it's not just a project or a team or a technology or a destination, although you need all of those things. What it mostly is a change in mindset. You need to have a culture that is willing to adapt to this and sort of move with more of a product mindset. And what we want to do is go through a number of areas that we think are particularly important. And I'm going to use an illustration with a client to sort of talk about how some of those things come to life. And this particular company has done a very good job at delivering that. There are a few sort of, before we dive into that, a few what I would call outdated notions that I wanted to touch on. The first of which is that a lot of our clients think of digital as living in the IT organization. And while clearly that is a requirement for doing digital efforts, we believe that you really need to start from the outside in, understand the needs of the customers, figure out where the most value can be created for the most valuable of those customers, and then organize the way you deploy your data or deploy your technology and other things based on that. A lot of our clients will say to us, oh, well, people still like talking to us. If I move them all to digital, what's that going to do? Well, the reality of digital is that it's both. It is both live and on screens. People want to be able to interact with you how, when, and where they prefer, and that may be live, that may be on a telephone call, that may be on a phone, that may be on a laptop. And so the idea is you want to have as easy and frictionless and personalized an experience across all of those different channels as possible, and make sure that if you've done something on your phone and then you need to feel like you need to talk to somebody, that there's a seamless connection, and that person on the call center or customer representative is up to speed on what you've been doing. It's also often thought that there is a digital department. And while some companies need to start that way, where we find the most success is where you get the entirety of the company really thinking in the same direction, focused on the same goals, understanding the role that they're playing in delivering success, and really working in a synergistic way to pull that through. And getting companies to get to that point is a significant challenge, and we'll talk a bit about how to address that in just a second. Speed is, I think, not an option. It's really a requirement. If you look at digitally native businesses, they move at 4 or 5 times faster than legacy businesses. Businesses that are leaders in the space move about twice as fast as those that don't. They also drive significantly higher, 2 to 3x kind of revenue growth. And so the speed of being able to change and adapt and sense and respond very quickly is extremely important. And lastly, it really needs to be about value. And many of our clients will ask us, hey, can you come in and talk about AI or IoT or or cryptocurrency and a number of things that are very popular today. And while all of those are interesting topics, they may or may not be applicable, because what you really need to figure out is, for your customer, where are the areas that you can drive the most value with them, and figure out then, once you've created that sort of prioritized roadmap, what are the capabilities and enablers that you need to put in place to make that happen. So it's really moved, in our opinion at least, from more of a kind of a technology discussion into a business discussion that is now powered by technology. So what we think is that being digital requires that you be agile across all of these parts of the business. So we put customer value at the middle. This is what we believe is customer value drives business value. You're going to get people who stick around longer. Your customer acquisition will be more effective. You will be able to sell more products to more people. And you will be able to have them refer you to others. And what we have seen is that the degree to which you're able to prioritize the highest value areas and focus your efforts on that, that tends to drive the most positive business results. And all of these things around this, I don't know if it's an octagon or I'm not exactly sure what to call that, but there are 6 areas: vision and strategy, product experience, customer engagement, tech and data, business ops, and people and org. So I'm going to go through each of these sort of one by one, talk about what we think good looks like, and use an example to bring that to life. Let's get past this page. So the company that we want to use as an illustration is Capital One. Capital One is, I think, the 10th or 11th largest bank around. They are about $400 billion in assets under management. And interestingly, they started on this digital journey a long time ago. So late 2011 is when they first got into this, which was way ahead of any of their peers. And they made some very strong statements and convictions very early on that has enabled them, we believe, to be not only one of the best performing financial service digital businesses, but one of the best performing legacy digital businesses around. That's hard to say. And they have really adopted and sort of taken to heart this notion of agility. So you've probably seen, Samuel L. Jackson's Ask You What's in Your Wallet. So if you want to ask that question, you better know whose wallet you're in. And so one of the very first things they did is they focused on understanding the nature of what their customers desired. So this notion of customer obsession, this is a word or phrase that you hear around a lot now. They were one of the first people to really talk about this and institutionalize that. And among many of the things that I'll talk about, they went from a kind of interview man on the street, do a couple focus groups, to a data analytics and insights team that is north of 2,000 employees. So I'm going to try to go through kind of each part of our octagon there, talk about what we think are hallmarks of doing this well, and then show a little bit of how Capital One brought this to life. So the first one is envision and strategy. So well-defined, aligned, and provides energy. Well-defined means that you actually have a point of view that is different from what everybody else is saying. And most of the clients we talk to, they've got a statement, but it is not well differentiated, not terribly precise. It kind of is an all things to all people proposition. Aligned means that not only within the C-suite, including the CEO, have alignment to that, but that is pushed down into the organization. And where the CEO is not supporting it, or parts of the organization have not bought in and are sort of running off and doing their own things, that tends to be a key indicator of failure or poor performance with companies. And maybe most importantly is it needs to provide energy. So it's got to be something that is inspiring. We sometimes talk about visualizing the vision. So don't just put a statement on a PowerPoint slide. Make a video that shows you, here's what the current experience looks like with one of your customers. Here's what the future could be. Something that gets people jazzed, something that gives people a if you will, a vision of what Oz could look like. And it tends to be an extremely motivating thing, particularly for businesses who are very used to doing things in a status quo way, and it's a big leap for them to move to new ways of operating. So for Capital One, they sort of dared to be different and really push this very aggressively from the beginning. I'm going to read the statement on the upper right because this is, especially for a bank, very, very unique. Vision is to create the bank of the future that helps people lead simpler, more fulfilling, and more rewarding lives, deliver the right product to the right customer at the right time at the right price. So the fact that they are talking not about themselves, not about selling more loans, not about doing more mortgages, not about getting their commercial clients into treasury management, and rather to understand the needs and wants and goals of those customers and align in that way was particularly at the time a very kind of enlightened view. In 2012, their CEO, the statement on the lower right, basically said that we are no longer a bank. We want to be a technology business who happens to sell financial services products, which again, for any legacy business, much less a financial service business, which tends to be very conservative, was a very ambitious thing to talk about. So kind of what they did is they had this vision, and they initially talked about sort of three key pillars. Number one, insourced IT. So they really wanted to build a bridge between the technology side of the house and the commercial side of the house, which had not been happening very well in the past. Number two, they wanted to dial up in a dramatic way their data capabilities and be able to create personalization for their clients, and have been on that journey ever since. And then finally, they wanted to get the right talent, and we'll spend some time talking about sort of the talent and culture side of it and how they brought in talent that helped them to make this move where that didn't exist currently in-house. So the next section is around sort of the experience with the customer. So in terms of products and experiences, and by product I mean a digital product, they need to clearly be insight-driven. I think historically, products were built with assumed insights around customers. You are much better served by actually speaking to them or mining the data to understand kind of their needs and wants. What is the journey that they're going through? What are the most important needs? What are the critical pain points that need to be addressed? And armed with this information, it is incredibly clarifying for what you should be focusing on and what you shouldn't be focusing on. They also need to be fluid and iterative because the market is continuously moving. Not only are customer expectations changing, but competition isn't sitting still either. So the idea of continuous releases and moving very quickly is also very important. Once you've got products that are good, then you've got to figure out how to engage the customer with those products. And so data is central to this, but it is how and when do I reach out to them? Am I making recommendations? How do I alert them to issues that may exist? How do I make a suggestion when a loan is due and it's 2 days before the payment and they haven't received it? You get a ping that says, hey, make sure you're on top of this. And so engagement is an interesting concept. And I'm happy to talk about this more offline, but we have an approach we call engagement economics. And the basic idea is that you can take any segment of customers and you can determine how engaged they are, meaning how attached to the brand they are. So a level 1 engaged customer is satisfies my basic needs. A level 4 engaged customer is I can't imagine life without you. And people become more engaged the more value and more types of value you're able to provide to them in more parts of their life. And what you tend to find is as you move up the ladder to more and more engaged customer, the economic contribution of those individuals goes up exponentially. So whether that is top of wallet behavior or spend per occasion or frequency of purchase or net promoter score, so recommend it to my friends, all of those metrics go up in a very dramatic fashion. And everybody talks about customer engagement being important. It's very difficult to measure the impact of that. So this is kind of one way that we help clients to think about how that works. So Capital One, and what did they do? Just take a quick drink of water here. By the way, I had a sport coat, but it is extremely hot here, so I just couldn't do it. But it's right there, so I did bring it. Okay, so Capital One, they really have consistently said over the last 10 or 12 years now that they are not about Capital One. It's really about our customers and their money and their lives and how can we help them better sort of achieve their goals. They were one of the very first in banking to come up with a mobile app. This is back in 2012-13. And very lately, they've done things that even reach well beyond what banking services provide. So a couple quick examples. This is sort of very early work. Basic mobile app. You could check your balances. You could make payments. You could check on the status of a loan that you were applying for. And they were able to do that across all of the different platforms. What's more interesting is where they are today. So they do things like if you want to apply for auto financing, you can see if you're pre-qualified without having it ding your credit report, which is difficult to do. They have Eno. So Eno is kind of their AI chatbot. It is very sophisticated. It speaks in a very natural language. It is available 24/7. It makes recommendations to you. It can address any questions that you may have. It alerts you when there are any kind of fraudulent or potentially fraudulent charges that show up on your card. And it's been fairly well adopted by them. And maybe a really interesting one is Capital One Shopping, because technically it doesn't have anything to do with banking. But what it is, and this is for free, is you're online, you're looking to buy something, and it will automatically show you if there are any discounts available on that product, if there is a rewards program attached to that you ought to think about, and it will scan 30,000 other online retailers and tell you if you can get the same product at a better price and connect you with that link. So things like this that are kind of reaching, it still involves money, but it's not banking per se, but how do I become kind of more integrated into the daily lives of my customer is something that is, I think, very compelling, and they have really been on the forefront of being able to do this. So from there, we move into sort of the tech and data part of this. I think, and you guys, there's been all the talks that I've listened in on sort of hit on a lot of these topics, but they have done all of them. We believe that a strong platform is scalable, that it is flexible and able to work easily with changes in the marketplace. The data is unified, it's well governed, it's well managed, and easy to be deployed. And ultimately, you'd like it to be predictive. That, I think, is still aspirational for a lot of folks, but getting to the point where it can be anticipatory of a customer's needs is really where I think that is headed. So what Capital One is, one of the things they did is they have organized their data team in a way that serves the entirety of the company. So whether you're talking about customer experience or reporting or insights into product development or even insights into how to improve operations and be more productive and save dollars, they are available for all of those things and really see themselves as sort of servant leaders addressing the various internal constituents of the company. A couple of things that they have done. So bank or data company, they think of themselves more as the latter. As I mentioned, this is centralized. They have moved all of their on-prem onto the cloud on AWS with Snowflake. They've got a number of data analysts. They are extremely focused on experimentation. So they've got a failure is okay, but fail small and fail fast, and continue to improve and refine what you're doing. So have really ingrained that in the way the data team works. And they also have not been afraid to acquire, whether that's acquiring a new tool or acquiring additional data. They've been very, very ambitious about how they continue to build that out. More on the tech side of tech and data, they are really a leader both from mindset to application. And kind of to cut to the chase, they enable a level of responsiveness at scale that is quite remarkable, especially for a company of their size, and especially with all of the regulatory constraints and other things that come with the banking business, which are pretty substantial. So let me sort of show you what they call the flywheel and a little bit of how this works. So on the sort of left-hand side, which is sort of the inspiration, they start by a very sophisticated way of segmenting their customers. So they really understand not just who is first, second, and third most important to them, but also they know an enormous amount around them. So what are their needs? What are their wants? What are their behaviors? What are the goals that are important to them? And they figure this out both from qualitative, survey-based, as well as data-driven inputs. And so all of that feeds into the product designer, which is kind of the second part, and designing products that are working in real time, that are highly personalized to the needs of the customers, that are very responsive or anticipatory of what those needs are. That then goes from a product manager into the software engineer. Their enterprise agility, as I mentioned, is very high. Their architecture is modern. They are into microservices and open source and a number of other very progressive things. And then the data scientist is really the one who's driving these experiments, and they told us that last year they did over 80,000 data experiments, which I don't know if that sounds impressive to you. That sounded very impressive to us. And the results have been very positive. So a couple of them on the sort of lower left here. Over 3 years, they improved customer retention by 87%. That is a number in any industry that we've ever worked in that we've never seen be as high as that. They also were able to reduce customer acquisition costs by 83%. So by better understanding the kinds of customers that Capital One appeals to, it helped them refine and tailor their approach to going out and getting new business. So it's been a very effective program. And then the last part of this kind of story is the people and organization and operation. So on the people side, there are a few things that are important. Number one, that it needs to be an adaptable organization, meaning that that organization may be structured one way today, but a shift in the market may necessitate a change, and having a notion of agility to be willing to move with that is very important. Collaboration is probably the most important word here. Moving from a siloed mentality or a siloed organization structure to a horizontal organization structure, where you have product pods or product teams that have all of the functions that are needed to design, prototype, deliver, and commercialize that product. And what happens is it helps eliminate handoffs, issues which invariably come up. All you got to do is talk to the guy next to you on the team and figure out how to solve it. Everyone on that team, regardless of function, is going after the same kinds of outcomes for that particular customer. And this notion of kind of horizontal organizational structures has been a hallmark of success. And lastly, empowered, meaning that you want to, as much as possible, delegate decision making. So push it down to the teams, let them make the call based on what the customer is telling them. So good product teams operate in a very kind of sense and respond kind of way, and you want that team to be able to get a reaction and be able to pivot or sunset some portion of that or add some kind of new feature or capability in a way that can move very quickly to market. On the operations side, business ops, there's a couple of things here. I think automation is something that is becoming more and more prevalent. So how do I automate sort of low-skill tasks and let my employees focus on higher-order tasks? And this does a whole bunch of good things, right? So that employee is now being more effective. Number two, they are more satisfied in their work because they're doing more interesting work, and it helps to reduce attrition and attract new employees. You also want, from a process perspective, for things to be connected and repeatable. So there are many, many dependencies for different things that you need to do, and so going in and really understanding how that operating model works, and we call it the spaghetti chart, but there's often a very convoluted way to the way that things operate inside a business. How do you streamline that and simplify that? And also, how do you make those processes repeatable so that you can train it one way the same time and everybody is able to sort of follow the same script? So for Cap One, they've really, and this is sort of amazing to us, but they've shown us examples. They've been able to compete for digital talent with all the big guys. And they claim that the work that they're doing is interesting enough and their level of advancement is far enough that, against a Facebook or Microsoft, or Meta as we now call it, they can compete head to head with these guys and have been very successful at pulling folks in. I think on the operations side, probably the single biggest thing is the shift in culture that they've been able to enact. Banks are quite risk averse, and they had a very strong kind of risk management culture before, and they've moved from that to a much more horizontal way of working where They are more flexible about the type of risk that they're willing to take. It's like, yes, if this doesn't go well, that's not going to be a showstopper, so how do I loosen up the reins a bit? And also facilitate a lot more innovation. Historically, banks are sort of anti-innovative, I would say. And these guys have really proved that that model doesn't necessarily have to work that way. So a little bit on what they've done from their org. The first thing they did, which is pretty interesting, is they went and hired 35 product developers from startups or other digital businesses, people who, for the most part, didn't know anything about banking. 2 of them happened to work with us at West Monroe, so we know the kind of inside story on this. You don't need to know that. That was almost bad. Here, let me introduce you to all my friends. Penny did that. Okay, so they went out and hired these 35 folks who knew how to build product. And the idea was, like, we don't really know what we're doing. Let's bring in some people who know how to do this. Let's pair them with some progressive guys who understand at least the basics about banking and, build some muscle memory around this, build some wins around this. And that strategy was a little bit risky. I mean, 35 people is a lot of people to invest in. And I'll talk about how they progressed that in just a moment, but it was a very interesting move. They initially organized centrally. I think many people think that you should immediately try and bake digital capabilities into the business units. I can tell you business units are not ready for that, and you need to do this in a much more progressive way. So I'll talk a little bit about how they did that in just a second. They are very strong proponents of mobility. So lateral mobility, especially for digital talent, is a very high priority. They want to learn, and they want to be able to move into different sorts of functions and learn different sorts of things. So they allow people a lot of flexibility with doing that. And they promote very quickly. So if somebody's doing a good job, they are able to fast track them and are not sort of standing on ceremony there. And this was not necessarily good for us, but they have made a very strong move away from using third parties. They've tried to sort of build things internally, things like design, things like customer insights, for the very simple reason that they needed a lot, so it was no longer an ad hoc need, and it allows them just to move a lot more quickly. Like, we love working with our clients, but it's not as fast as if you have somebody in-house who's able to do that. They have developed kind of a digital university, so they are not only continuing the training and advancement of people who know digital, but also sort of bringing those who are maybe not as familiar with it up to speed. And they changed the way they put measurements in place for their leaders to really encourage not only bringing talent in, but bringing what they call kind of creative technology talent. So this is a little bit of sort of how they did this. It started as a standalone group with these 35 folks plus some other internal folks, but mostly this group. It was centrally funded out of the office of the CEO. And basically the job that they were there to do is to help build a capability, build some muscle memory, help teach the organization that at the time this crazy digital stuff actually could really have a difference and really create value for the business. They moved to sort of a hybrid model where individual pods or teams of people were assigned to given business units, and the business unit was basically a leaseback arrangement where the business unit would sort of pay for the time of that group, and they would align on how that sort of fit into their roadmap. And where they've gotten to today is it's become fully integrated. So digital teams are now sitting within the business units with a very light kind of COE capability on the side. It is fully funded by the business units, and it is now working rather smoothly. So how is all of this done for them? It's done pretty well. Revenue, so just a couple of stats here. If you look at on the left-hand side, they increased revenue by 12% over a 3-year period, which is, especially for a bank, a very strong accomplishment. The stats on the bottom I spoke to already. And if you look on the right, and this is not not up-to-the-minute stock data, but as of several months ago, I mean, they had been outperforming by a pretty significant degree, both larger and smaller competition. So it's really done very, very well for them. The other thing I just wanted to quickly share kind of around this org point, and I pause on this because in all the research that we've done and research that we've looked at, it is the single greatest point of failure, is not changing how you work, the way your culture operates, and the kind of talent that you have. And I won't go through all the numbers on this slide, but these are, we've done some proprietary research, and we interviewed about 400 senior executives, and what we asked them, companies that were doing well as companies that weren't doing so well in digital, what were the things that were common? And these are the numbers for those that were the leaders in the area. So, having a holistic enterprise strategy that people understand, committing to customer centricity, having a fail-fast environment, enabling career mobility, having a learning and development strategy in place because people are very compelled by that, and the importance of collaboration. And so this is, I think this is very strong evidence of the importance of these things. We also asked them the degree of the myriad of things that you need to think about of what's driving success in your business. As you think about people in org and culture, where does that rate? And it rated either 1 or 2 for every single company that we talked to. So it's a very important thing and often an overlooked thing when clients are, or companies are thinking about moving into this. Happy to talk more about this as well afterward. So some indicated actions for, the data team. A couple of thoughts. Number one, we have seen this work best when you clearly understand the needs of the business or help them to understand what the needs of their business should be. The better you understand that, the better how whatever application of data is being used can be used. Be clear-eyed around what you need. So if you compare where Capital One started to where they are today, I mean, they changed almost everything. And they made a huge commitment to doing that, and they were not afraid to challenge the status quo and make bold moves where they thought they needed to do that. So having an openness to that kind of change, I think, is a second very important thing. Having a group of change leaders, so the most effective relationships that we've seen are one that has more of a challenger mindset. So you're willing to debate things and push and not just say yes or not always just push back, but really be somebody who is willing and open and thoughtful about how change can occur. Building credibility both with internal and external partners by really understanding what they do. So the better you understand their function and what they need and how they operate, the better you're going to be able to serve them. And I can just tell you from a consultant's view, we'll bring 2 different groups into a room and they have almost no idea. They've sometimes never even met each other, but really have a lack of understanding. They don't use the same language. There's a lot of static that exists in that. And so being a bridge and sort of committing yourself to understanding that is, we believe, also very important. And finally, kind of back to this notion of experimentation is don't be afraid of failure. A lot of companies, a failure is seen as a negative. We think, failure is the first act in learning. So experiment. Experiment small and quickly so that you're not taking too much, but small and continuous experimentations, especially in this market where a lot of things are still unknown and still emerging, we think is very powerful. So a couple of thoughts for that. And so that leaves us with this. So this is kind of where we think are the various pieces that need to come together for a company. And I will pause there for any comments or questions. And I hope you enjoyed that.
I see a question.
Okay.
I'm going to take the question. How long did it take Capital One to set the foundation between the time they set the foundation and then they started to see benefits?
I would say that they were able to see benefits within the first year in some of those smaller programs. Part of the art of this is kind of a start small and move fast. So take a couple of use cases, put the right team against it, set clear success metrics, and hopefully deliver results on that. And so that is the approach that they took, and they were able to demonstrate not broad-based success, but success in pockets very, very quickly, and use that success to help build upon that. So it was within the first year. Yes?
So this is more of a comment than a question, but I'd love to hear your insights on it. At my organization, I work at New York City Health and Hospitals. While we're not, I wouldn't call us like we're on a digital transformation track. I do believe we're using data a lot more than ever before.
Yep.
And I think one thing that really helped us is that we had a culture of safety, where our leadership really reinforced the idea that mistakes are going to happen. Let us know what can we do to improve. Constantly having that conversation, and I hear this resonate in this story as well. So it's an interesting thing because I don't think that I alone as the CDO would have been able to move the needle anywhere near as much if I didn't already have a CEO and various other leaders that were enforcing that concept of safety and growth mindset.
100%.
It sounds like, in this example, the entire company was all in on let's move in that direction and let's have that type of.
I mean, I would 100% agree with that, and we often use kind of growth versus fixed mindset as a way to think about it. And in our experience, it only really happens when what you just mentioned happens. Like the CEO needs to come out and say, this is what we're going to do, here's how we're going to do it, here's how you're going to be treated to help us get to where we need to get to. And having that commitment and having that be echoed, not only echoed by the leaders of those individuals, but even changing the way compensation works, right? So in some companies, there is an experimentation metric, like, how have you demonstration of innovation, and so not only making it safe, but actually encouraging people to move in that direction. So I couldn't agree more with your comment. I think that's spot on. But it's difficult to do without that level of commitment, and not all senior leadership by a long shot is there yet. The more enlightened ones are, and I could give you an example of one client who, the only reason that this company is moving in this kind of, it happens to be a bank, but they're moving in this kind of the direction, is a CEO who's not a digitally native guy. He's 70 years old, but he's like, I know that we need to do this. I hear what my customers are telling me. I see what our competition is doing. They're way ahead of us. We just don't know exactly where we should start or how much we should spend or in what order we should do it. And so we need some help to go and do that. But it has been his very vocal commitment with his senior leadership team as well as with the board that pushed this across. Without him, it would never have happened.
Hey, Nick, good presentation. For those of us who can't scale the 2,000 data digital analysts, what is your advice to us to try to be able to, we have similar challenges, we just can't scale to the level. So what words of advice would you offer to us?
Well, I would say a few things. I mean, there are ourselves and others in the consulting world who have very strong data analytic capabilities. So you can outsource it to an organization like that. There are also a number of platforms, particularly in the marketing space, that are very analytically based. So we will often work with a company with an analytical need, and especially if they are of smaller size, help them with kind of a vendor selection on, hey, if we need this particular capability, what's the best team to do that? So vendor selection, I would say, in general, smaller businesses tend to use more platform-based services, whereas larger businesses build it on their own. They're doing custom software. An example with some built-in analytics within banking is a platform called Backbase. So Backbase is basically a pre-configured and very well-done digital banking platform. It clicks into the banking core on the bottom. It connects up into all the APIs that you want to connect into. They've got feature library. They have designers who can help you, make it look the way you want it to look. Not fully customizable and not cheap, but cheaper than trying to build it yourself and build the capabilities to continually service a digital banking capability. So, I think those are the two main things that we're seeing our clients take a look at. no other questions from anyone? Did this, I mean, let me ask this. Did this resonate, what I'm saying? Does this feel like it's in a good direction? Would you say that, that some of the challenges cited here are consistent with what you're seeing in your businesses? It is probably among the top, certainly among the top 5 challenges our clients talk to us about. It is also one of our biggest challenges as a business. You know, we need 35 new digital designers, and we can't find them. So it is certainly a challenge. It is also why, in the absence of being able to hire it internally, at least temporarily using a vendor to help augment that. So, for example, even with Capital One, one of the things we're doing now is they're trying to do so much stuff that they're running short on a number of capabilities. So they brought in 3 of our product teams to work with select members of theirs because they just don't have the capacity to be able to handle it, and they kind of like the way we work. We're pretty consistent with the way they think, but would also agree with that as a comment.
One other thing too is there's a maturity spectrum for all of this. I would say that some of the items that you're talking about, you know, at least from a digital transformation, some organizations aren't just ready to adopt yet. I've found that, you know, initially from a data perspective, we were really spending a lot of our time offering dashboards and reports because that's what the customer is ready to consume.
Sure.
But we're kind of like trying to handhold them to get more into analytics and not necessarily, you know, talk to them about the tech, but more of looking at their problems and talk about how digital solutions can support them. But it's a process.
Well, so it's a very good point. And the good news of this example is that they've done an amazing job. The bad news is that they're way ahead of almost everybody. And so one of the things, so your comment on maturity is spot on. Like one of the things we always start with is what we call a digital maturity assessment. And we look at 16 different elements of a business. And we've done a bunch of benchmarking work. And we can very quickly put you on a scale of 1 to 5 and say you're a 1 over here, you're a 4 over here, you're somewhere in the middle over there, with concrete examples of why. Now, a very immature company is going to have a lot of 1s and a lot of red. And so the answer isn't that you need to fix all of those. The answer is that for the first set of things you need to do, either to be more competitive or to address core pain points of your customer or whatever the case may be, or I may have a cost problem, I got to take cost out of the business. In order to deliver those opportunities and generate this value, of those 16 things, you got to fix these 5 right away. Don't worry about the other ones later. So that's one thought. The other thought is framing this as a journey, because it really is. It's not like you do a digital transformation project and it ends. It is an ongoing effort. And even very mature companies, they're still a lot less mature than digitally native guys or in banking than the fintechs. All these fintech companies are coming in mostly for point solutions, but they are super elegant, super fast, super simple, super easy to use, and banks are, not quite there yet. So it is absolutely a process, and sort of helping a client know where on that maturity continuum they sit, things that they may have done in the past that that are great and we can build upon, or maybe things they've done in the past that are not so great and need to be shut down, and what is the sort of sequence and pacing of those projects going forward. So it's a very important part of the discussion.
And any more questions in the audience? Because we have some online. Any more in here? No? Okay. Question online. How long did it take them to set the foundation? Oh, you already hit that? Yeah, we did. Okay. Sorry.
And Penny was doing your job for you, so yep.
Obviously, let me tap dance. Good. So go ahead, fire away. There's a mic right behind you. Just stand up and talk right into it.
You mentioned Capital One has a lightweight COE, and can you elaborate a little bit more on the balancing between having some centralized functions and then having all the, having data science embedded within different domains within the organization? How does communication work? How does knowledge sharing work? That sort of thing.
So when I say embedded, it is that the product team is embedded. They still have a centralized data function. So if you want to call that a COE, you could. That centralized data function, though, has individuals within it that are clearly aligned to each business unit and focused on the needs of that particular business unit. In terms of communication, one of the things, and we have helped them a little bit with this, but they also have a very deliberate governance structure. So they have a set of projects that are on the plan. In that sort of digital hub, if you will, individuals from all the different functions, from the commercial side, from the product side, as well as shared services, come in and talk on a continuing basis about what the needs are, where something hasn't been met, where something needs to happen. So, and that meeting happens bi-weekly, and then it sort of rolls up to a more senior group. So that sort of live and continuous interaction is something that they are very strong at doing. And thinking of that as a gathering point and a checkpoint on how that portfolio is going. Am I resourcing it properly? Are the vendors being managed well? Is somebody using 2 different vendors for the same thing? All those sorts of questions get teased out in that sort of governance function there. Yep.
Any other questions? All right. Well, we won't beat a dead horse. I think this was a great lecture, although I missed probably 20 minutes due to emergencies. But I want to say thank you again for everybody for attending. And we're really lucky to be able to have Nicholas here. He has a terrific experience set in digital. And you could always approach him after the session if you'd like, if you have any personal questions you want to ask. And thanks again. I think he deserves a big hand. Thanks, Nick.
Thank you.